This is a story about a New York cop invited to a Los Angeles Christmas party to be reunited with his wife. However, unexpected guests show up and take over a skyscraper from the bottom up. John McClane, who only wanted to find a place to sleep, tries to call for help, but no one believes him. So John takes matters in his own hands. A building is blown up, covering people in glass. The FBI arrives, demands are made, and the roof explodes. But the safe opens. McLean's wife is in mortal danger, and more people die. Villain drops 30 stories, wishing he had more time. Another is gunned down, and a nosy reporter is punched in the face. Merry Christmas. Released in 1988, we take a look at Die Hard, its themes and its tropes. Starring Bruce Willis, you know him as the Seagram's guy. If you ask today what made Die Hard the classic movie, likely you'll be told Bruce Willis was a proven action hero, or that Alan Rickman was naturally a great villain. They may even mention Reginald VelJohnson's brand of cop humor that put the film over the edge. But in 1988, Bruce Willis played a smart-ass detective with co-star Sybil Shepherd. That and singing passionately about wine drinks, raging with 3% alcohol. As far as Alan Rickman, he was known as Obadiah Slope in the Barchester Chronicles with Donald Pleasance. I never heard of it. Moving on, Reginald VelJohnson's character, Art Powell, would be renamed Carl Winslow on a television series where he continued playing a police officer fighting new, crazier, more dangerous villains. TGIF. The late 80s. Ronald Reagan was in the last days of his presidency. America was in a Cold War with the Soviet Union, and we turned to Hollywood to win that war. When we think of action heroes of the time, we think of Stallone, Schwarzenegger, and Van Damme, and some others. These muscle-bound walking tropes have been fighting the enemy and anyone resembling an enemy with impunity. They were unstoppable, patriotic, superheroes worthy of their own comic book or cartoon. They were invincible. But John McClane, he's different. He's an everyman and someone we can relate to. He's nervous flying, talks about work, has marriage problems, and shows unease with high tech. The film goes out of its way beginning with his weaknesses rather than his strengths. He's out of his element, barefoot, and doesn't even know where he'll sleep at night. His marriage is on the rocks, and he can't pronounce Pomona. We, the audience, are goaded into rooting for John McClane, even when an everyman may not be enough to save the day. John McClane is a character we have empathy with. We understand him because we understand his world. We see in Die Hard the many things we immediately relate to: airports, Christmas parties, cigarettes, convenience stores, and high gas prices. It also uses its fair share of tropes. For example, the policeman Art Powell has an infinity for snack food. Sound familiar? Die Hard is full of other tropes for you to get the world. A police officer with a haunted past, a housekeeper of indeterminate legal status, German speaking synonymous with evil, an Asian electronic superpower threatening American economic status. Sure glad we turned that corner. Oh, right. Die Hard cleverly wrote a relationship between the audience and his hero, linking them by the world. And we root for him. But most of all, we trust him. How do we know this? He says so in his very first scene. These aren't coincidences. They're deliberately crafted lines that have you cheer for John McClane before he puts his first footstep on Los Angeles.
No one who speaks German could be an evil man.
On a scale of 1 to 10, Alan Rickman was 11 plus in his performance as Hans Gruber, and worthy of a Bond villain. He is not only effective due to his acting, but his character defines him as John McClane's opposite. While McClane begins the movie talking about things we would: wife, job, family. Hans Gruber talks about men's fashion, scaled models, and industrialization. He doesn't need to shoot anybody in cold blood before we want to see him have his comeuppance. And that's the simplicity of the story. Not that speaking German didn't tip that off, but Hans and his group are not someone we're supposed to relate to. That's the trope. One of the charming elements of Die Hard is in its humor. It's not just because Bruce Willis's clever one-liners, but the use of incongruity when two unrelated elements pair together. If you watch The Three Stooges, where the rich and elite get into a pie fight, well, that's an example of incongruity. While no one is throwing pies in Die Hard, it's full of unrelated pairings. Male hero encumbered with a giant teddy bear, hip hop Christmas music, McClane standing in an opulent bathroom wearing a cheap sleeveless t shirt, violent guests make their entrance with classical music, basketball stories and murder, SWAT team being annoyed by roses. Some of the incongruities are very subtle. Instead of two elements unrelated coming together, it's two elements that seem related but not. The two Agent Johnsons, the comment about being like Saigon, disagreeing whether or not the power could be cut from a manhole. The humor helps make the film not so dour or depressing. Look at Hans Gruber. With all of his lectures and posturing, he's just a common thief. He has a reputation for being an extremist, but is shown to the world as a man enjoying a cup of coffee. One of the best examples is when the FBI unknowingly participates in Gruber's master plan by cutting the power grid. As the agents celebrate, Hans watches the vault unseal to the tune of classical Christmas music. We can't finish talking about Die Hard's use of incongruities without John McClane and his limo ride. And he screwed that up too. This is why he takes the front seat. It's not supposed to be like this. And that's the point. Why does John McClane pick a fight with a dozen men, barefoot with little more than a pistol? If you say to save his wife, your answer would be correct, but woefully incomplete. If you remember, he wanted to think his way out of the crisis by setting off the fire alarm. When that didn't work, John called police dispatch and pleaded for help. Only then did he decide to be a one-man army. But that explains how, but not why. The motivation behind John's heroism is tipped off early, real early. Remember how he shows unease traveling in an airplane? It's about control. See, John is a control freak. This rears its ugly head throughout the film. He gets into an argument with Holly, police dispatch, Deputy Commissioner Dwayne T. Robinson, and most of all, Hans Gruber. At least twice did they argue by radio who was in charge of the situation. And how does John figure out Hans Gruber was posing as Bill Clay, using an American accent? The answer is in another trope, the quality of American cigarettes. In the 80s, when smoking was more in fashion and not the crime it is today, American cigarettes were considered the gold standard. When John offers a European cigarette, Hans doesn't complain it wasn't a Marlboro. And if you notice, Hans holds a cigarette in the stereotypical way between his thumb and forefinger, while John holds his in the American technique between two fingers. It was at this moment John figured it out. It took me about 20 years to notice this, when I long thought it was Hans speaking German into the radio that tipped McClane off, and he handed him an unloaded firearm just because he was paranoid. The movie is full of themes, foreshadowing something to be twisted later. Even the teddy bear gets in a line. Let's count them: the limousine, smoking, Holly's pictures, the Rolex watch, being barefoot, the large crate, snacks before moments of violence, and Powell's pacifism. But there are other examples of themes. One of them is radio eavesdropping. Richard Thornburg eavesdrops on police radio. Thornburg takes advantage of Paulina's suspected legal status, another trope, and helps expose Holly's marriage to John. Geez, I wish someone would just punch him in the nose. Even Christmas was more than a theme for an office party. In the season of gift wrap and cellophane tape, it paid off in the final minutes.
Happy trails, Hans.
Though much time has passed since Die Hard 1988, the movie aged well thanks to the charisma of Bruce Willis and the performance from the late Alan Rickman. It's a testament to the writing and directing. It's ironic as every sequel following, coming closer to our present time, has less of a cultural impact than the one before it. Finally, there's been a debate whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie. I've taken sides and will give you 5 definitive reasons why Die Hard is certainly not a Christmas film. I'm just kidding. It's definitely a Christmas movie. Let me know in the comments below what you liked most about Die Hard. Like, share, or subscribe if you enjoyed this content. This is Mr. G of Synergy saying Yippee-ki-yay. Thanks for watching.